Friday. Welcome inside Mr. Small's Theater, the Upper Room studio here in Millvale. I'm Matt Gike, and you are listening to and watching, if you're on our website, Gike's Got Game. This is the River's Edge. You can find us 24/7 at riversedgepgh.com. Brian Crawford on the ones and twos, as always, for this program. Later in the show, Adam Crowley of ESPN Radio Pittsburgh will join me. Also, he broadcasts on Steelers Nation Radio too, so he's about to get a lot busier. We'll discuss the crazy sports media landscape that both of us are trying to carve out careers within, and not just talking about in general, but also in the local area too. So that'll be fun, catching up with Adam. I guest on his show quite a bit over on ESPN Pittsburgh, where he hosts a drive time program 4 to 7. So Adam returns the favor on this Friday morning. Also later on, we'll ban the cliche, and this one's a particularly insidious one, I think, too. It's become rather popular for sports media folks to go outside their bounds, in my opinion. So I'll get into that in segment number 2. To close the show, we'll have the final number, and I don't know if I've discussed that much tennis this year on the program, but I will to conclude the show. You can probably guess where that's going, especially as it pertains to numbers and historic numbers that were achieved just a couple of days ago over in the London suburb of Wimbledon. Of course, the Open Championship going on at Royal Birkdale, too. So I'm in my glory. Golf, tennis, perfect time of the year for the individual sports to take to the forefront. But also, we've got plenty of baseball on the docket today, too. You know why? Because the Pirates just completed a much-needed 6-1 homestand. They swept the first-place Milwaukee Brewers in 4 games at PNC Park. So they go from, in my mind, they should have been sellers, to now you have to really think about adding to this club. And it came down to getting that sweep. They needed all 4 games. They've gotten within 3 of first place in the Central with about 70 games to go. A 10-game trip starts tonight out in Denver. Pirates and Rockies 3-game weekend set. The Rockies are good, and in fact, they're the team the Pirates would have to chase down if they want any shot of a wild card. I don't know if that's necessarily possible, 7.5 games out, but there's that for you if you need that sort of hope too. Trade deadline coming up though, so certainly the urgency to perform is right there for Pittsburgh, and we'll get into more of that in a little bit. But I do want to talk baseball primarily in our opening segment this week, but not necessarily about the Pirates as a team. It's more about how you as the fan reacted to an individual returning to the field, and his name was Starling Marte. Marte, of course, was suspended for 80 games due to a performance-enhancing drug suspension that he knew about in the spring. He claims that he was just careless in the offseason with supplements, and you might know from reading up on this in the past that when you get outside of America, you get to the Latin American countries in particular, there aren't a lot of regulations on those sort of things. And even the FDA in this country has just recently cracked down on stuff you could buy at your local GNC, maybe stuff that I've even bought at my local GNC over here in Westview, just up the road, that contain not illegal substances, but substances that would get you a positive test in a lot of sports leagues, and maybe if you were trying to qualify for the Olympics, which I am not. But of course, Starling Marte has a higher standard on the things that he puts into his body. So he failed that. No matter whether you believe him or you don't, he's back on the field, and the Pirates are a better team with him. He didn't do terribly much in his return, 3 games under his belt since he came back. He had a single, a walk, and a run scored. Also got thrown out stealing in that first game Tuesday night at PNC Park. But the most newsworthy part of his return for me was the warm reception he got from the crowd. And I can't say I expected that, but you had signs, you had kids clamoring for his autograph too. And kids will be kids. I'm not sure I would have cared that much about a PED suspension when I was 8 or 12 even. But you had plenty of adults, too, giving Marte, in some cases, a standing ovation as he took to the plate. And this might have ticked off some people, and I'll get to that in the next segment. And I mentioned some media folks were upset about it. neither here nor there, in my opinion. I want to talk about what that meant, what that warm reception meant, and did it mean anything new? Did it tell you anything new about Pirates fans or sports fans generally? I think it did. I think sports fans these days are more sophisticated, more savvy, maybe even more sensitive, if you want to throw in a third S into that mix, and I will, than they used to be. And when I say savvy and sophisticated, usually I'm talking about knowing the facts, getting the numbers, the data. There's so much of that in sports. I love it. I write about it weekly on dkpittsburghsports.com in my Matt Stats feature. I relate to the rational type of thinking that results from knowing hard facts as opposed to emotions. But being a fan's all about emotions, isn't it? Fan is short for fanatic, as I've been reminded many, many times. And as someone told me on Twitter, if fans were always rational, they'd be called rats, not fans. I thought that was a pretty good turn of phrase. I enjoyed that joke. I don't know if you are on board with me there, but I think you can agree that fans don't often behave rationally. But maybe in this case, they really did. And they realized that there would be no positivity gained for Marte or the Pirates. It would do the team no good. It would do the player no good for him to hear boos in his home ballpark. I think we're going to hear some boos and jeers at Coors Field, and then when the Pirates proceed on to San Francisco and San Diego as that West Coast trip continues, yes, he will be treated rather rudely, as he probably should, right? Pirates fans still boo Ryan Braun quite a bit. Braun's case, a bit different. Yes, he also tested positive for a PED in 2013, but he tried to besmirch the name of the tester, if you'll remember, and put his reputation and his integrity into question, and that didn't go over very well in the general sporting community, not among fans, and Pittsburghers in general have not let it go. I think in Pittsburgh is where Braun still gets the most boos that he hears on the National League circuit. But it was a different thing for Starling Marte. You could say, oh, that's just cynical. They want the home team to do well. Marte's an all-star caliber player, and he's back. So the Pirates are still in this playoff race, and so we're going to cheer him. I understand that too, but maybe fans also considered the thought that Marte has probably beat himself up enough over this situation. You sit out for 80 games, you watch your team struggle without you. The Pirates, as of a couple of weeks ago, were, I believe, 9 games under 500, and now they've won 11 out of 13. They've boosted themselves up to the break-even point as they take to the road. They were several games out of the National League Central, and now after whitewashing Milwaukee, they're right there. And it doesn't take any kind of stretch of the imagination to say they're in contention. So to get Marte back at this point of the season is massive. They're not going to get Jung Ho Kang back, it doesn't appear, so this is the one bit of cavalry that you could count on. I don't know if they're going to pick up anybody at the deadline. So this is, in effect, their biggest acquisition they could probably make at this point of the season. If you put Marte in left field regularly as opposed to John Jaso or even Adam Frazier, who's had a nice full first season in the big leagues, that's a big improvement. And maybe fans thought that the wheels were turning up there, and they decided that booing him would just distract him from the task at hand. I think that's the case. And I think people are more sensitive to that sort of thing and less vindictive of their own players, especially. I remember back in the 90s watching the Pirates, and it wouldn't take much for an underperforming guy to start hearing the boos. And that was the same for the Penguins and the Steelers. Maybe we've just gotten less harsh as a society. Maybe we've gotten less harsh as Pittsburghers. Or maybe we've just gotten more homerish. I don't know. You tell me. If you have an idea, get at me on Twitter at Matt Gajtka, MattGajtka. I'm also on Facebook at Matt Gajtka Sports Media. So just trying to put my best guess as to what that warm reception meant. Perhaps I'm reading too much into it. You'll recall when Barry Bonds was going through his trials and tribulations, at least not on the field, but off the field, and there were so many suspicions, perhaps justifiably so, that he was taking all sorts of performance-enhancing drugs back when he was clubbing home runs at a historic rate in the early part of the 21st century. Giants fans loved him. It was incredible, the type of applause he would hear and the cheers he would hear at, I believe that was Pacific Bell Park at the time, but at its own ballpark in San Francisco. Now, there is one main difference between Barry Bonds and Starling Marte. Bonds, because the MLB testing regulations were nothing, they were a joke at the time, he never got suspended, and Marte did. So Marte directly hurt his team while Barry Bonds didn't. So perhaps we need to just throw out all that reference to the pre-PED testing era in Major League Baseball. And you look to Ryan Braun, I'm not sure he really got booed in Milwaukee. I don't remember. He's maybe the most high-profile guy to test positive recently. And if you want to throw Alex Rodriguez in there, that one, I don't know if there's a direct comparison because Rodriguez was already an unpopular figure in New York, and he missed the entire season when he was suspended too. So he went out of sight, out of mind in a big way, and there were already negative feelings about him. Before Marte was suspended, there was nothing negative about him. Perhaps we just need to take each of these cases one by one and move on from there. But I was surprised, I will say that, by the level of positivity that Marte saw on Tuesday night. Maybe I shouldn't have been. Maybe Pittsburgh is just, in general, a place that rallies around its athletes. We all know Pittsburgh is a very parochial place. And when I say that, I mean we defend our own. We fight against others on the outside who might deride our places, our problems even. We're very protective. And Marte is one of ours in that case. So perhaps that was a message sent that we're going to welcome him back with open arms, and we don't approve of what he did, but he's already suffered enough. He's put himself through enough, and now it's time to move on. So if that's the case, I say that's a pretty mature approach, not necessarily a cynical one or a self-serving one or a homer approach, but one that just looks ahead and moves on. And if you listen to psychologists and sports psychologists in particular, you talk to these athletes about their mental approach, it is all about the next one. And Clint Hurdle said that, yes, there were several in the Pirates clubhouse who were very upset at Marte for testing positive. When that news came out in St. Louis back in April, shockwaves went around the Pirates clubhouse. Andrew McCutchen, you might remember when he was put back in center field after he was displaced from center field in the spring when the Pirates decided that that would be better for their defensive alignment and their defensive success. McCutchen made a great catch, I believe it was the next night after the Marte suspension was announced in St. Louis, and was shown on camera pointing to center field saying, "This is my spot." So you know he probably felt some anger there, saying, well, you're going to put the guy who just tested positive for PEDs in my position and say that he's better than me. Maybe he's only been better than me because he's been artificially enhanced. I don't know about that. I think it was a one-time offense for Marte. I'll believe him there. And part of that is because he never tested positive before, and it's tougher to sneak by the testers than it ever was before. But that McCutchen incident, that outburst emotionally, that I think is pretty representative of what you might have seen in the clubhouse. I think Gregory Polanco was pretty down. He took it a different way. Where McCutchen might have been angry, Polanco might have been upset and sad about his fellow Dominican being removed from the team and making this mistake and putting his team in a tough spot. But the team and the coaches and the manager and the organization and the fans had enough time, I think, to get over that, to get over the flash emotion of the moment and just think in pragmatic, mature terms and say, he's back, let's give him a hand and let's boost him on to greater things. You could say that Marte didn't get enough punishment in the public eye. I think he did. I think he probably punished himself enough. He's not exactly someone who is going to whistle past the graveyard. I think he hears things. He understands that he made an impact negatively in this way, and he's eager to try to mend some fences. And doing well in the field would be the best way to do that, while definitely just keeping his mouth shut and not trying to make any kind of public display of I suppose, saying that he screwed up. It was more of just a situation where he needs to get back on the field, I think, and I believe the fans appreciated that and we're going to go from there. And like I said, we'll see the reaction on the road. I have a feeling it'll be very counter to the one that Marte got at PNC Park. You're watching Gike's Got Game on the River's Edge, or you're listening to it on our 24/7 audio stream. When I come back, I'll ban a cliche, and then we'll move along from this and talk about some bigger issues relating to the Pirates and also sports media. That's all later in this hour on the River's Edge. Welcome back inside Mr. Small's Theater. Matt Gajtka with Brian Crawford on the board. This is Gike's Got Game. We're with you every Friday from 10 to 11. Hope you enjoyed last week's On the Road edition of the show. Literally, my wife Jillian joined me as we were driving up through the state of Michigan, going to Crystal Mountain, which is on the west coast, if you will, the Golden Coast of Michigan on the lake. And we were up there for an annual golf getaway weekend, so we talked about the sport, what it's meant to both of our families, why it brings our families closer together, all that mushy stuff. I thought it was fun. I thought it was pretty good, and we also were able to avoid wrecking the car as we recorded it too, which is always a plus. And Brian might tell you, with his experience recording Culture Cruise, you just heard that promo, that can sometimes be a challenge. But there you have it. Guys got game for last week, a half-hour edition from Interstate 75 in the Great Lakes State. Short segment here before we welcome Adam Crowley on, my good friend from ESPN Radio Pittsburgh. Before I get to that, though, I want to remind you that Pittsburgh's second annual Indie Rock Fest is this weekend. In fact, it's tomorrow, Saturday, July 22nd at Cativo in Lawrenceville. 5 p.m. start, $10 cover, 21 and over show. You have 12 acts on 2 stages, and you can find all that information online, but I'll read a few more things to you here. Some of the bands that will be in attendance: A Little Less Human, Ancient History, Bad Custer, Daily Grind, Dan Getkin and the 12-6, Essential Machine, Native Alloys, Pop Thief, Standard Broadcast. There you are. It's Indie Rock Fest, second annual at Cativo, Saturday, July 22nd, 5 p.m. And you know that we're all about promoting local music. You hear it on our station almost all the time when we're not putting our talk programming on the stream. So there you have it, another opportunity to enjoy it live here in the area. Time to ban the cliche. And at times when I do this on this show, which is every time, it's about a particular grouping of words that I find worn out, and I think we can do better as a media culture, maybe just a general sports culture too, to eliminate and find more creative ways to refer to familiar concepts. This time, I'm talking about a general theme and a trend in sports media, and that is telling fans what to do or how to think or how to feel. I saw so much of that in the run-up to Marte's return to the field, and I alluded to this in the opening segment today. I don't think that's our place as sports media. I don't care if you're a columnist or a reporter or someone like me, commentator, analyst, whatever you want to call what I do. It's not our place to tell you what to do or how to cheer, whether to boo. Figure it out for yourself. That's how you feel. That's what you do. And I saw plenty of that beforehand, and then after, when Marte got a warm reception, then I saw plenty of scolding in the aftermath. Where did we get off as sports media professionals to do this to people, to tell people that they were wrong? Our jobs are to analyze what happens on the field, and in my case, sometimes, like I did in the first segment, what happens off the field and how you react to it. But I'm not going to tell you what to do. That seems like that's not my place at all. And I want to welcome Brian Crawford in on this one. I want to ask his opinion.
Okay.
What do you think? Should anybody in the sports media be saying, "Oh, that wasn't right for you to cheer," or "I would have booed"? Why are you cheering? Does that turn you off, or do you think that's all part of the job?
I don't know. I think it depends on what your objective is. I know as Pittsburgh's moral compass, I like to lay down the gauntlet. Whenever people
sure do, but yeah. That's your thing. That's what you do on this show. And do you tell people how to react though?
I know I do. Like when it comes to like Penguin games, and because I go there and it's like a silent crowd. You can hear crickets during like actual game time, but then when it comes time to like kiss someone on camera or dance
Yeah,
at a dilly bar.
I agree
Everyone
with
goes
that.
crazy. So I have been known to criticize people for things like that. I've definitely been one to. No, I'm not a sports commentator. I'm more of a
Right.
social commentator.
Yeah.
But I'll go out and I know with Michael Vick, I was pretty vocal in my opinions in that situation, and people's willingness to just kind of look the other way when it comes to things like assault and things like that. So I guess, yeah, I do criticize people's, and I like it whenever, and I don't know, I think it depends. It's a little bit different when someone is doing something that harms himself versus doing something that harms another person as well.
Well, in this case, I didn't see that it was any kind of a situation where you would be infringing upon the rights of your fellow man. That's different.
I agree. Yeah, it's a different situation here where, I don't know. Honestly, it's people like to overreact on things like that. That's not like, I don't know. He's your team player. If he's not hurting someone else, then I agree with you.
And he served his punishment.
Yeah.
So, well, I expressed my views on this in the first segment anyway. But so there you have it.
Yeah.
Difference of opinion in the studio, too, in addition to my difference of opinion with a lot of the folks in my industry. Let's take a step out, and when I come back, another person from this industry, Adam Crowley, will join me for what is sure to be a wide-ranging segment. If you ever listen to his show on ESPN Radio here in town, you know he takes it far afield. That's one of the reasons why I enjoy listening to it. We'll have him on. And we'll talk about this, what the reception for Marte means, and also some recent news in sports media. This is Gike's Got Game on the River's Edge.
Going out on a Friday night, I'm looking good because I'm dressed to kill.
Back for segment 3 here on the River's Edge on Friday morning. Thank you for watching on our stream. We're on Facebook Live, of course, but you can find that at riversedgepgh.com/live. And that's where our audio stream is, too, right in that vicinity at riversedgepgh.com. My guest at this time is a host from 4 to 7, Drive Time on ESPN Radio Pittsburgh, also a host on Steelers Nation Radio, and does pre- and post-work on DVE during Steelers season, so that means he's about to get a lot more busy than he has been. But he's carved out some time just before the start of Steelers training camp to join me here on the show. His name is Adam Crowley. And Adam, good morning. I hate to bring up your pending busyness, but I know you're thinking about it already at this time of the year. Well, we have some technical issues. So, Adam, are you with us?
I think I'm here.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, as long as you hear me, I hear you, so we're good to go. This time of the year, are you trying to just take care of some things on the to-do list before you head out to Latrobe and really get headlong into football season?
Yeah, winter is here. When training camp arrives, that means that my summer is over, and I get noticeably more depressed the week prior to training camp. Just ask my wife. But it's coming, and I will be prepared in, 6 days.
Now, I know you enjoy it, but it's almost like when you're looking ahead and you're a kid, and it's about this time of the summer, in fact, and you think, I got to start buying books and school supplies and all that. So I'm sure it's a similar feel in that case. I suppose I'll be feeling that in September when hockey season approaches rather quickly.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that. It's a good feeling to see all your media buddies because everyone's going to be packed into the dorms, and everyone's going to be hanging out at Sharky's and having a couple of beers and having fun that way. But there's a lot of heavy lifting to do when you're around training camp. I know I'll be doing at least 5 hours of radio every day. So looking forward to doing that while being outside sweating bullets. So thanks for the reminder.
That's all part of the experience, right? So will you still be doing your drive time show on ESPN while you do the Steelers Nation radio?
Yep, that is the plan. I'm going to do 2 hours leading into my show on Steelers Nation Radio, and then I'll be doing from 4 to 7 on ESPN Pittsburgh.
Okay. So you moved from, it was morning, right? 10 to 12 previous to
yes.
You moved to drive time. Have you changed your approach at all? Has that changed how you go about your job because you have more news of the day, I suppose, to get to? So has that been a big difference for you as you made that move?
I like the added prep time. I like the ability to have an entire day to work on a radio show. I think that helps the quality of the show. It is a little bit harder to fill 3 hours when nobody bleeping calls, which is something we're going to try to continue to work on. I also haven't had much time to develop a rhythm, given that I have been off a bunch leading up to Steelers camp because I got to smoke them if you got them, so to speak. So I feel like once Steelers season rolls around and I'm consistently doing the show every day from 4 until 7, that good things will happen. But it's all about kind of ramping up to that rhythm right now. So that's where we are.
Your approach to your show seems similar to my approach to this show, where I try to get outside the sports radio, sports media cliches. But that can also be a challenge, can it? That can be a double-edged sword. It's all, it sounds nice to say I'm going to be creative and not talk about what everyone else is talking about, but that also makes for extra work. So do you ever wonder what exactly you're trying to accomplish there? Because sometimes I do too. I think I could just have a tap in with this type of a topic, but you don't want to tread over ground that's already been walked upon, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point by you. And what has become difficult for me is setting a precedent early of being wacky, being different, pushing the boundaries. In fact, we interviewed Roger Goodell without actually talking to Roger Goodell and pretended like we were at press row on media day. And I thought it worked very well. It was funny. It kind of made a point that media day is largely pointless. It's a bunch of the same people walking by and getting asked the same questions. But now you hit a time in the sports calendar where there's not much going on. Well, until, OJ and all that stuff. And now Hugh Freeze. Hey, how about that?
That was a gift.
But before these things happen, you're really starting to pull at threads. And it's easy to get sucked back into the, hey, should Max Moroff have played today? Mm-hmm. Or, oh, what is Neil Huntington going to do with the trade deadline? And sometimes I'm guilty of getting sucked into the same topics that everyone's talking about. But hopefully there's enough of the nuanced discussion on the show that can make people realize that I do have a different discernible quality to my program than other people's shows.
Adam Crowley joins me here this morning on The River's Edge. And I spent my first segment today talking about my reaction to the Marte reaction. I think I expected a little bit more vitriol from the PNC Park crowd on Tuesday night when he took the field and Clint Hurdle conveniently batted him leadoff too, so they could get all that out of the way. I thought I would see a little bit more anger, or hear a little bit more anger, more appropriately, from the crowd. I did not. What does that tell you? Does it tell you anything about Pittsburgh sports fans in general? Our reaction to PED suspensions these days, are those more commonplace, or we have had more of a precedent there, so it's not quite as shocking? How do you make sense of the warm reception that he got Tuesday night?
I think if you wear black and gold, you're going to get one reaction. And if you wear Brewers on the front of your jersey or Milwaukee, you're going to get a different reaction. And I think it's not as simple as that, but I think that plays into it a bunch. I think Pirates fans realize that, yes, Starling Marte did probably cost the Pirates a couple of games in the standings by not being around for 80 games. But now the Pirates are in the middle of this thing. Doesn't matter how they got here. Doesn't matter how sexy it's been, but they are here in the middle of this race, and Starling Marte can help them. I don't like looking at sports fans and having them determine for me how I should feel about a given situation. And it bothers me that so many talking heads in this city made their stand the only stand that matters. In fact, we had Colin Dunlap hoist Starling Marte up on this pedestal because he's battled his way back his entire career from being from the Dominican and from the poverty and from not having anything. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, you're not supposed to boo the guy. But then you've got Andrew Filipponi on the other side who's saying, how could you not boo this guy? It's ridiculous that you would not, given that he cost the Pirates everything in those first 80 games. And what I found more frustrating than anything was just how sanctimonious both sides of the argument really became on this subject. And I don't need sports radio hosts. I don't need talking heads to be my parents. I don't need them trying to preach to me their morals and try to project them on me. And I guess that's what I'm doing now about the talking heads, but I don't need the talking heads doing that about sports. Don't tell me how to watch my damn sports.
That's a similar feeling to what I had, though. I felt like it's not our place as sports media people, talking heads, as you put it, to tell people that sort of thing. Maybe if that's how you get your jollies, then go for it. But for me, I'm going to analyze what Marte cost him. I'm going to wonder what, like I just did, what the reaction means about sports fans, if it's just a home away type of thing, which you think it might be. But I'm not going to tell people what to do. That doesn't seem like that's in my purview at all. Maybe that's just my personality in general, and it could be yours too off the air.
Well, and it really manifests itself in so many different ways in sports. I mean, this Colin Kaepernick situation is one where, my God, the morality's coming out. It's ridiculous, everything that you hear. Now O.J. Simpson. Now Hugh Freeze. The Hugh Freeze thing makes me laugh because you look at college sports and Hugh Freeze had the number one recruiting class. I believe it was 2013. And at that time, people were saying, well, this is Ole Miss, and they have the number one recruiting class. So what's going on there? Obviously something seedy. And it turns out all along there was seedy things going on. But now it's his dialing of a prostitution ring number that's going to get him fired. Uh-oh. And you have the NCAA pretending as if they are some flag bearers for some sort of moral ground here. And they're going to fire the guy for that reason, or force him to resign for that reason, because, that's immoral, but not the cheating. It's just interesting to me how the goalposts move on these kinds of things. And the fact that everyone's got an opinion. Martavis Bryant's another one. Everyone wants to jump on the side of Ben Roethlisberger and say, why is Martavis Bryant calling him out publicly? Well, when Ben Roethlisberger called Martavis out publicly, he was talking about how hurt he was. Meanwhile, the person who was really hurt the most was Martavis. It was his own doing, but Martavis Bryant hurt himself the most. We never really think about the humanitarian side of these, or the humanity side of these things. I realize that's a long tangent there, but
go for it.
But when thinking about all these different issues, so many times we're told how we should feel, and we don't really think about it outside of the A, B, C, or D Twitter poll that they're going to put up there. How you should feel this way, this way, this way, or this way. Okay, well, what if I feel a different way?
How did you come about this thought that you wanted to go into this career and do your thing with some nuance and not just be formulaic? Where does that come from for you?
I don't know. There are a number of different things that I think factored in. Number one, I think I'm a lot smarter than I actually am. There are a lot of times where I'll think I'm having a nuanced conversation, and I'll go back and listen to the tape afterwards and think, man, there are a lot of different strings I could have pulled out there, and I didn't. And that's one thing I'm continuing to try to improve on. I'm 26 years old. I'm still relatively new to the field, and I want to keep getting better every day. But the thing that really got me into this was I started listening to the Dan Le Batard show, and he made me think about sports the way that I think that I have always sort of thought about sports, and that's that it shouldn't be the most important thing in your life. And whenever you look at it that way, you can separate it from some of the other issues that are going on, and you can make light of how people do invest their time in sports, and you can sort of make fun of how seriously people take their sports. The people who hate Martavis Bryant because he cost the Steelers a championship last year, perhaps. And the reality is he hurt himself more than any fan could possibly even pretend to be hurt by the situation. So I just like to think of things like that a little bit more, put sports into context and realize that it's not the biggest thing going.
Well, a big thing for all of us is our livelihoods, and this sports media landscape has been very irregular lately, just media generally, I think, Adam, and you're just getting into it. I've been in it for about a decade, and I feel like it's changed 1,000 times. We just saw FoxSports.com lay off all their writers. They're going to all video. They're pivoting to video in their parlance. And, we're seeing layoffs across the board, traditional media sources cutting their staffs, newspapers definitely taking part in that bloodletting, whether it be locally or nationally. We're seeing sites like the one that I work for, DKPittsburghSports.com, try to embrace the subscription model and take back what we as sports media, and I use that term generally, tried to or take back the ground that we ceded when we put everything online for free. And that's just that's news, that's sports, that's everything back in the early days of the internet. So do you think, from what you've seen from your position here, you don't work for a sub-site like we do, but what's your feel on how that might succeed or how it might fare? Do you think that it's possible to get people en masse to start paying for their content when they're used to not doing it? Because I think that's the $100,000 question for all this movement and all these changes.
It's easy to say now, hindsight being 2020, that it's surprising that it hadn't happened sooner. And Deion's model has worked. Obviously, you're getting a paycheck.
It's very
you
nice.
guys
Yes.
continue, yeah, right. You guys continue to add writers. You know, added a long form writer, so things are going well. Obviously, for you guys, Boston obviously felt enough of the platform to go for it as well with the Boston Sports Journal or whatever it's called that they're doing.
Greg Bedard starting that.
Yeah, so obviously it's working. You consider other mediums. If you want something quality more times than not now, you're going to have to pay for it. HBO's as good as it gets when it comes to premium television. People have to buy cable packages because they want to get HBO, other premium channels as well. You have to pay a premium for quality products. And I think people are starting to get that. I think it shows that there is a faith in independent journalism that we talk about very often. You wish that more people did care about it. Well, it sounds like here in Pittsburgh, certainly when it comes to their sports teams, people do care about it. I will say this, when you think about Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports in general and ESPN getting rid of Grantland, it does make you wonder where things are going outside of a sports hotbed like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh and Boston, great sports towns. I mean, there are a number of great sports towns all across the country. But whenever you consider the national side of things, they're not doing this because it doesn't make sense for them. They're not getting rid of the writing because people were paying attention to the writing, and now all of a sudden they just say, screw it, we don't want to do that anyway. Obviously, they weren't getting enough clicks. Obviously, not enough people were reading Grantland. So I think maybe on a hyper-local level, it can work, what you guys are doing. But nationally, I think we still have to see when it comes to sports.
I'm very curious about The Athletic, which is now a chain of subscription websites backed by some venture capitalists out of Silicon Valley. But they just started a site in the Bay Area. They're starting one soon in Nashville, from what I understand. Maybe I'll let the cat out of the bag on that one, but I believe that is coming. Toronto, Chicago. I've already been in existence, Cleveland / the state of Ohio too. So they wanted to add some national stuff, and I'm with you. I think it's easier to sell it locally or regionally, whatever you want to call it, because you have people tied to their teams and emotionally locked in. They feel like they want to support their town in addition to their teams. So I think that all helps. That has helped us at our site, and I think it will help in a spot like Boston. And one thing I will say, I was surprised how relative few subscribers we needed to be solvent right away. I was thinking you might have to match the big newspapers or what they were at their peaks in order to be successful. You really don't have to if you price it right, and if you get people on board and maybe lock them in long term, that helps too. So I'm bullish on what Greg Bedard, the former Boston Globe and NFL.com, or pardon me, SI.com NFL writer, will be able to do in a city like that. I don't know if it'll work in every city, but they don't have to get too much of that slice of the pie up in Boston to make it happen. Well, Adam, tell them where to find you on Twitter. We'll let you go, and also where to listen to you, because it's going to be an expanding palette of places here in about a week.
Yeah, no kidding. Appreciate you having me on, Matt.
Yeah, no problem.
Really do. @ Adam Crowley on Twitter. You can listen on 970 AM, 106.3 FM from 4 until 7. But the easier way, the signal's not that great. One of the things I always say on the show is that
Listen
the
online.
The number one virtue of the Crowley show is that I'm going to be transparent. It's transparency. So, look, the signal sucks. I admit that. Go on ESPNPGH.com if you want to listen, and Steelers.com and the official Steelers app for Steelers Nation Radio.
I have a hard time getting it in Westview, which is about 5 miles north of downtown. When I grew up in West Virginia, in Weirton, it depended on which way the wind was blowing and whether there were clouds in the sky if I could get ESPN out of Pittsburgh. So glad you bring that up. Yeah, listen to it online. That's the way to go about it. That's where you can find all the Steelers Nation radio content at any rate, too. The pride of West Virginia University, and I say that as a proud Marshall grad. He is Adam Crowley, and we'll have to have him on in the near future. We'll step aside, take our final break. When I come back, the final number. Yes, the world of tennis. I love individual sports, so deal with it. I'm going to talk about Roger Federer and what he accomplished last week at Wimbledon. This is The River's Edge.
This next song is about something very important to me. It's a love song, actually.
Final segment of Gike's Got Game on The River's Edge. I appreciate having Adam Crowley of ESPN Radio and, well, we'll call it iHeartMedia on the program today. And check out his content, his hot hashtag content, 4 to 7. ESPN Radio, ESPNRadioPGH.com, I believe is the link, but you can find him on Twitter, and he has all the pertinent information for you there where you can connect with him. He is _ Adam Crowley, Crowley. I am Matt, Gajtka, and this is my program. Time to wrap it up with the final number. Roger Federer, the Swiss machine, has won 2 Grand Slam tournaments this year. He picked up his 8th Wimbledon championship. That's a record, surpassing Pete Sampras. He now has it all to himself, does Raj. And he also has... Well, he's had this record all to himself for a while. The number of total Grand Slam singles titles by a man. 19 for Roger. And this time, he did not lose a single set in capturing his 8th Wimbledon. At age 35, it was quite the week, or the fortnight, as they say. 2 weeks for 35 and over tennis players, because Venus Williams nearly took the championship too at 37. So that's inspiring for me. I'm 32. Selfishly, I think about that stuff. I want to feel like I'm still somewhat in my prime in some form or fashion. So thanks to Roger and Venus for that. But to not drop a set, that's dominance to the level of the mid-2000s Roger Federer, of 10 years ago, when he was playing tennis at a level none of us had ever seen. And while we can debate the greatest of all time conversation, that's always tough considering how much the game has changed, how much equipment has changed, fitness, nutrition. It's all so much better now than it used to be. I think Bjorn Borg's still up there with his 11 championships. He won 6 on clay, 5 on grass. That's really cool. Those are the 2 most different surfaces in the sport. So you tip your cap to him there. Pete Sampras had the all-time Grand Slam record. The American, of course, 14 championships. You have Novak Djokovic, as good of a all-court player as we've seen in this era or any era. He has 12 Grand Slams. Rafa Nadal has 15. 10 of those at the French, so maybe you discount that a little bit. But his head-to-head record against Roger is a winning one. On clay, he's dominant, and he's held his own on the other surfaces, too, including what might have been the greatest tennis match of all time, the 2008 Wimbledon final, went 5 sets. I loved it, I know that. It was a clash of 2 disparate players and personalities, right versus left. It had it all back then, and the 2 still battle for the all-time leading Grand Slams, although it looks like at this point it's going to be Roger's title on the men's side. He's still short of Steffi Graf, of Serena Williams, if we're talking all genders. But on the men's side, after what he did this year, winning the Aussie, defeating Rafa Nadal, and winning Wimbledon, I think you got to give him the greatest of all-time title. And the final number for this week's show is 19. One more than, if you're talking cross-sport too, Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicklaus had 18 Grand Slams in golf, or majors as they call them more commonly in that sport, We all thought Tiger Woods might get 20 or more. I'm still holding out hope that Tiger just gets one more, or at least gets back on the course and gives us a Sunday thrill at a major. That's my humble request. I don't know if we're going to get there, but Federer, in male individual sports, the most majors ever, 19, and he did it looking fresh, took some time off last year to heal up, I believe, a knee injury, and then he took time off after winning the Australian in January, quite a bit of time, in fact. That raised eyebrows in the tennis community, but the man knows his body, knew he needed his rest at 35. He's got 2 sets of twins at home. I know I have one kid, and it's tough enough to get your rest, so I know Roger's got nannies, and he flies private jets and all the accoutrements of fame, but I still got to give him credit for soldiering on, and who knows, maybe he wins the U.S. Open and makes it a 3-major year, matching his best year of all time. But Roger Federer, as always, we're not worthy. I used to root against you, didn't think you were very fun to cheer for because you were so dominant, but as often happens with aging athletes, I start to get on their side as they get near the end. I don't care how much I rooted against them in their primes. That's my weird thing. You don't have to subscribe to that theory, but as for right now, I'm on the Federer bandwagon, and I'm really enjoying seeing him stretch out his career and taking it to a new level, stretching what we once thought to be a tennis player's prime well beyond the boundaries. That's great for all of us, I think, because a better life into our 30s, into our 40s and 50s, hey, how's that a bad thing? So bravo, Roger. Well done. And you are the owner of the final number on this week's edition of Gike's Got Game. As always, the hour passed rather quickly. For Brian Crawford and Adam Crowley, my expert witness today, I'm Matt Gajtka, reminding you that when the radio fades, you know life's moving fast. R.I.P. Chester Bennington, another one lost from the history of rock music too this week. And on a somber note, but something I'm thinking about. If you need help, please reach out. We need to take mental health a lot more seriously in this country, and I think we're getting there, but as some high-profile cases, Chris Cornell earlier this summer, also illustrate, it's been a rough go. For those of you who love music, love hard rock, I do, so it's been a tough one there. So we'll talk to you next time, hopefully on a brighter note. We'll be in the final week of July. We'll chat with you from Mr. Small's Theater right here in Millvale, Pennsylvania.